Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to have the most courage in the whole wide world? We got a show for you. Well, good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls, the best book on planet Earth.
I keep hearing the Bears, the
But
Bulls.
we're neck and neck with Bet on You.
Yeah.
This thing is sick. If you haven't followed us on YouTube, go ahead and do that now. Hit the alert button so you know when we go live every single dang time. And follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, not Farmers Only. You'll find out the hard way. We're not there.
Yeah. No. Don't even own a profile there.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
That'd be weird. Nick, will you introduce our guest today?
I will, and I'm going to read the bio this time because it's thought provoking. It's a little different. Usually we'll do a brief intro of you, but one thing about Laban that I've learned is that his story, the way he tells story, is what really draws you in. So I'm going to tell the story that he sent me to share with you because I think that would be more impactful. So he said, fun fact, hitting rock bottom doesn't physically hurt. So the not so fun fact, emotional, spiritual, and mental rock bottom sucks. In just such a rock bottom moment, Laban Ditchburn sought help. Sure, he had great friends, a great career, and weekends that would go down in the annals of history. But underneath it all, Laban was crippled by addiction, drugs, gambling, drinking, sex, junk food, negative self-talk, limiting self-beliefs ruled his life, catalyzing countless acts of stupidity that nearly landed him in the grave. This is a story of how one party boy went from zero to hero and how you can too. If you're slowly spiraling out of control, if you're not having nearly as much fun as you used to, if you know you need a course correct, like now, Laban's raw, real-life stories will give you the permission to change all on your time. So if you have a feeling deep inside that you're destined for much greater things, if you don't know, or if you know there's a reason for being in this planet, this is your time to take massive and courageous action. Now is the time to bet on you. So I want to welcome you to the show, Laban Ditchburn.
Nicholas T. Smith, Ryan, good to see you, brothers. Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have
the
you,
Giants
man.
and the Giants.
The Giants and the Giant, man.
The
Laban Ditchburn and the Giants.
I dressed up just for you, too. I put on a suit jacket with no shirt on. Is that what you've got going on? That's
what I got going on there. My nipples are strategically hidden somewhere.
You're welcome, everyone.
Yeah, we got them right under the banner for everybody here. Oh, even then, show's not going to show it.
Aww.
You got everybody.
This is children's rated.
I do have to put on a hat though, because I feel weird.
I got the Ditchburn do going on, man.
Yeah,
the Ditchburn do.
But he's the only one that pulls it off like super amazing. Right? So.
It's that Arizona sun combined with the Mexican sun. You got to tan that up. You got to Magnum PI that mofo, right?
It's really messing with my lighting. My chest does that too. So
I'm going to prepare our audience a little bit. There might be some language dropping here, so if that might be an issue, this might not be the episode. But we're just going to be raw.
But it's in Australian.
It's Australian, so we're going to speak pure Australian, which might include some language. So. But the message is going to be impactful. So if you can hang with us, we're going to go through a journey here that will really impact you and show you that you can create courage wherever you're at in your life. And so I want to go back. We usually start back in the beginning. You can go all the way back in time to childhood. For a lot of people, that was where it was most impactful. Or you can go through an experience that had you wake up in life. And I'll let you choose where you want to start the story, but we'll follow you from there.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to go through that bio and to ask me that question. And it's something that I love sharing. And when I was 3.5, my parents split up. Messy divorce. I know a lot of people will resonate with this. Custody battles, being stolen away from foster homes and stuff. And when I was 35, I found myself in bed with about 3 bottles of appropriately priced Pinot Noir coursing its way through my veins. And I was gambling on a horse race on my laptop in a country that I wasn't in, spending money that was not mine to spend. And I had this epiphanous moment where I thought to myself, well, hang on a second. This isn't the life I imagined for myself as a young man. And in that moment, I saw a number in the bottom left-hand corner of the laptop screen. And I picked up my cell and I instinctively called this number. And it was the number for the Gamblers Helpline. And this woman whose voice was like velvety chocolate pudding picked up the phone and
Kind of like yours.
Flattery will get you everywhere, Ron.
Laban hears his own voice on the other side of the line.
That's weird. That sounds like me. Sounds like chocolate. Yeah.
Well, her last
chocolate pudding.
Her last name I'll never know, but her first name was Mary, and she's my Mary Magdalene. She was my guardian angel, whether she knew it or not. And Mary was a counselor for the Gamblers Helpline for 30 years, and for really the first time in my existence, I had an opportunity to share without judgment. And she asked me one question, and I just verbally diarrheaed what was going on in my life. And she just listened with the patience of a saint. And she started talking to me about gamblers and the negative consequences of gambling. And gambling, of all the other addictions, has the highest rate of suicide by a country mile. And it relates to how quickly people lose everything when they're gambling. And it really put the fear of God into me. And not a religious guy in any capacity, but have developed into a deeply spiritual being. And it really gave me the motivation I needed to do something about it. I was in a tremendous amount of pain. I'd bounced on the floor of rock bottom repeatedly, like one of those giant rubber balls. And I was starting to lose that inertia. And she put me in touch with the Salvation Army, and they had a program. There was a gambling psychologist. And I know, Ryan, with your background, you'll resonate with this. And we arranged to meet, and I had weekly visits for a year and then fortnightly visits for 6 months for free on the taxpayer's dime, paid with money with taxes from gambling losses. So for the first time in my life, I was actually up. And she asked me a couple of questions about my family and my mum, and I just burst out into the most guttural weeping. And what started that day was this journey of transformation. And I came to learn about all of the negative behaviors that I had picked up in my youth resulted in this escapism behavior. And even as a young man, I would escape with TVs and movies and video games for weeks and months on end. And as I moved into my adulthood, it became drinking and cigarettes and then drugs and gambling. And all of a sudden I found myself at 35, like heading off this precipice. And I'm very proud to stand before our audience today and share that it's been 5.5 years now since I touched a single drop. It's been longer for gambling and drugs, philandering and negative self-talk and limiting beliefs, and healed an autoimmune disease in the process, found the woman of my dreams, and found my purpose to be known as the world's most positively influential speaker by becoming the world's best courage coach.
I want to hit on something because I have this thought that the best time to get ahead of a problem is ahead of the problem, right? Before it becomes an issue. And I look at some of the behaviors in the world, like the numbing that occurs, and it shows up in the form of gambling or alcohol or, things like that. But it starts out with other things that are less nefarious, less damaging, less hurtful. It could be like video games, right? And it's not that any of these things by themselves are inherently negative. It's just when they become the numbing source and that's all you go to, then there's, they become problematic, and then they evolve into things like what you're discussing. And so I want to start at getting ahead of that. If you were to look back at your journey of where, you started numbing out, going through the hardships in life, right? Childhood, divorce, not friendly. And then you're like, these are intense emotions. I'd imagine you can help clarify and correct me. but you're going through these intense emotions. And as a kid, you don't know how to handle it. So you escape. You escape in any way that you can. And we all have a version of that. Okay, I won't say all of us. Many of us have a version of that. And yeah, go ahead. What comes up?
No, I just think, our bodies, our brains are so clever. And in order to cope with what we're experiencing when our brains are still developing, our body and our brains just create this ability to disassociate ourselves from it.
Yeah.
And, what's so interesting is that for the majority of my life, I couldn't remember hardly anything from really when I was born, apart from a few key moments, to when I was 18, 19. People would ask me when we were at high school, do you remember so-and-so and whatever? And I couldn't remember. And that had something to do with some of my diet, and that was going on. I was eating things that weren't serving me well. But as I started this healing process over the last 4 or 5 years, my memory has flooded back to me. And when I wrote the book, that whole process started the memory process as well. And you know what? All it was nothing more innocuous than being a child of divorce and parents that did the best they could with the tools they had available. And as soon as I realized, and turned it around from what they did to me to, well, hang on a second, they're just grown up versions of kids and doing the best they can. I was able to reclaim my power and to turn it around and turn it into my superpower. And now that I've reclaimed all that mofo, look out.
All that mofo. I love it. I had a client once that, we lost you, Ryan. Go ahead. You muted out.
I just was going to say, it sounds like you moved to Utah, not Arizona.
I went to a comedy gig last night. It was an improv night, and it was run by a Mormon organization. There was no swearing in it. And I'm taking a leaf out of their book. It was one of the funniest stand-up improv things I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. And I'm going to try and be a bit better with my profanity.
Perfect.
So,
yeah, if you go Australian, we'll still love you, man. So you talked about the power of the mind, right? The power and ability of the mind to adapt to a difficult situation. We all have it. Our bodies are designed for that. Viktor Frankl is a prime example of somebody going through that. The Gulag Archipelago, I believe, is another book of somebody that went through things that are just incredibly challenging. And we come through it. I had a client that was she's a psychologist, and she told me about the power of dissociation and the ability that the brain has to create multiple personalities to be able to survive anything, right? Like you could have one personality in one situation, another personality in another situation. It's a survival instinct. It's the body trying to survive. So you can't really fault the environment, the situation. Is our bodies go to work to keep us alive in that environment. But the intensity of that is where we emotionally and mentally go numb out, right? So recognizing that could be at play. Like I have kids, and so I've got to be aware of, are they numbing out? Are they spending too much time in that escapism, or are they engaging with the world? Right. I mean, do you have some ideas around how we can be aware of that within ourselves, within our family members, loved ones?
Look, I think it's just a self-awareness exercise and just being present with yourself and recognizing whether what you're doing is serving you or not. And, when I look back at my youth, I mean, if I didn't have, I think I've watched Star Wars about 250 times, at least on VHS. And, plus other, I've watched 3.5 months of The Simpsons. If you were to do it consecutively, I actually worked it out roughly, right? 3.5 months of my life watching TV. Like that's one, plus all the cooking shows I used to watch when I was hungover as well, which has made me a demon in the kitchen, by the way.
I just picture you rewinding all the VHS tapes, man. Like there's one, rewind, two.
Be kind, rewind, right? So I think that really confronting in a good way your experience and going, well, hang on a second, is this serving me well? Is this the direction that my life is supposed to head? And I think becoming really clear on what your purpose is will help you recognize that as well. So Hopefully that helps.
It is like tuning in, right? Being aware that that's present, because the avoidance of tuning in is the issue, right? Your body's telling you something. It's saying, look, pay attention. This is heavy. This is hard. And we don't tune into it. We numb out and we go off on a pathway, right? But tuning into that, I say, right, like you need to agree with me. You don't. You can say, no, that's completely.
No, I agree.
I don't like that at all. So you tune into it, and then there's an opportunity to do the work, and it's in the work that you start to shift your life. And sometimes it takes an awakening. And I know you breezed over your story a little bit. Like, yeah, you were addicted, and then you called this number, and then, you know, you had this conversation, your life changed. Like it was that easy. No, it wasn't that easy. Right. Can you go back to the idea of the awakening? What had you wake up in that moment that really had you see reality like it is?
Look, it was really a number of rock bottoms that I would wake up the next day, and they were usually drug and alcohol fueled, right? and I was like, oh man, that's not like, I'm 35. Like, why am I being chased by the police and being, you know, forced on my face and handcuffed for running away from the police? Why am I, you know, I had one incident where oh my God, this didn't make the book, but I had a date, and I was meeting this girl at my house. It was like a second date. And I went into the supermarket, and I wanted some red wine. And I like went behind the counter and grabbed 2 bottles of Grange. They're about $300 each, a red wine Grange, and just stole them. But I walked back into the supermarket from the bottle store that was attached to it, and bought some grapes or something, and then proceeded to try and pay for the grapes and then walk out of there. And it was like, it was right there for everyone to see. I was blind drunk. Security guard comes up to me, goes, "Did you pay for that wine?" And I was like, yeah, trying to fumble for my receipts. And I was busted. So I ended up having to pay for all this wine, right? I jump in the Uber. I go the 2 miles home to get home. And as I get out of the Uber, one of the bottles of wine falls out the bottom of the bag and smashes on the ground. Wow. I was just like, instant karma is a hell of a drug, right?
Yeah.
And then you wake up the next day and you go, what is going on with my life? And then I just had a number of those experiences, and I was just like, come on, Ditchburn, like, sort your shit out. And then that sort of just that point of rock bottom, I was like, I got to do something about this. I was in the most amount of pain possible, you know.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah, it's that awakening moment, right? Might come in different forms for different people, but you get a reality check. You're like, this is the reality that you're creating with your current behaviors, thinking, beliefs. I had a Jordan Peterson. I was listening to him this morning, beliefs, and he said, you know, if it's a belief, if you're acting on it. That's pretty simple definition, man.
I got to attribute Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life was one of the books that I read that was part of my healing process and was really beneficial for me. And for people that don't know about Jordan, he's got an extraordinary story. And him and I have got some similarities in terms of what he used to help with his anxiety and depression. He used a carnivore diet to sort that situation out as well. So amazing guy.
Speaking about waking up, this one's about falling asleep. So you had a lesson in your book that says, don't fall asleep on a nude beach.
That's a real life suggestion. Oh, because when you haven't exposed your bum to the sun since you're a baby, I had 2nd-degree burns on my bum a few years ago, and that is the worst pain I've ever been in, I think.
Oh man. Well, instant karma is a hell of a drug. Put that on your mirror. Instant karma is a hell of a drug. You know, there's a journey out of this. It's you go into this world of just being really unconscious, really unaware of who you're being. It's still a creation. It's still coming from you, but it's so automated that you have no awareness of it. It's like the people that drive to work and they don't know how they got there. It's like you're there, but you couldn't recall the path if you wanted to. And that's what we do with our lives. And so like having that awakening, if we can stay on that for a second, is just, you know, the depression that comes from waking up is pretty severe. And this is where a lot of people take their lives, is because it is intense to see where you're at.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. Not, like, this is an actual statistic, and it's something along the lines of 95% of our operating system is subconscious. So, like, how can you expect to succeed if you're driven by all this negative stuff that's in your subconscious? And I also heard something the other day that blew my mind, and it's that most people on the planet, most humans on the planet, unless they are passionate about it or an expert in it, comprehend life at a second grade level. That's 8 years of age. And it really blew my mind. And an author friend of mine who lives in Australia, his name's Andrew Matthews. He sold 8 million copies of his books in about 70 something different countries in about 60 different languages. He spoke to me 6 or 7 months ago about how he writes his books so that a Singaporean 11-year-old girl whose English is a second language can understand his books. And I believe that's why they are so successful and have been able to be translated into different languages and comprehended. And he even gets feedback from people around the world saying it's the first book they've ever read in their lives.
Yeah. Can you go back to the impact? Like you said, 8 years old.
That look, we are comprehending life at an 8-year-old level for the majority of it, right? And you think about if you were to ask me about Native American history growing up in Australia and New Zealand, I mean, I reference an American Indian in the book that I met in a bathroom that sold me drugs, but I don't know anything about Native American history, or not a lot, right? So that's me comprehending that maybe at a 6-year-old level, whatever that comprehension is. And I think, it's really given me an amazing appreciation and empathy for others as well, because it's kind of like you go through this journey, you talk about it, making it sound like it was easy. Well, it wasn't. It was the best thing I ever did, but it was hard AF, right?
Yeah.
The best thing I ever did, but the hardest thing I've ever done. And I think having that knowledge now has given me a real empathy for other people and their journeys and trying to meet them where they are. And it's made me a better coach, a better podcast host, maybe a better writer. And the next book I'm going to write, I'm going to be conscious of that knowledge when I put it out there to make it accessible to people that maybe aren't quite there yet.
Yeah. I mean, we got a bunch of adults that are 8-year-olds essentially, right? Sometimes there are spaces in your life where you got to put them in timeout, right? That create some distance because they're not quite awake to the way they show up, but when you do become aware that that's where developmentally you stopped, right? There is an opportunity to grow from that, an opportunity to step into emotionally who you could be. And when you say most of what we do is unconscious at an unconscious level, it's simply our body trying to automate and adapt to the environment around us. So it automates things. So when you talk about unconscious or subconscious behavior, it's body behavior. The spirit side that comes in, the mental side that's aware of it all, that wakes up to it, that gets it to move in another direction. Sometimes that's not even present because the body's so in control.
And what's a really powerful contribution to what you're saying there, Nick, is that mum and dad, they grew up in really shitty environments, right?
Yeah.
And then so when I was going through my transformation, I had to de-learn, I call it, right?
Right.
Not unlearn, to de-learn and then relearn the functional behaviors. And that was the huge part of the process, because you can be at rock bottom, decide to do something about it. But you got to ask for help, not so that you appear weak, but so you can remain strong. And you got to keep asking for help until you get it.
Yeah. So you didn't just throw on a pink jacket and then magically you're there.
That would be a really great outcome if that's how we could solve all of these challenges. But it would also take away from the beauty that is involved in the work and the power that I now have internally, and that I know that I can help other people with that want help. And what the beautiful unintended byproduct of my transformation is that it's broken the intergenerational trauma cycle in my family, and family members are starting to reconnect with me that were once distant and saying, hey, what are you doing? Tell me what's going on. We love what you're doing. We're proud of you, right? It's polarizing many people that were in my life beforehand that didn't serve me well. 97% of my former circle of friends, I haven't heard boo from.
I hear a journey there in that of it's an inside job. Courage is an inside job, and it starts with it being an outside job in a way. It's almost like you start learning the things and sharing them, and it's almost like this confirmation that comes in, and you want to get that back, and then you start to internalize that so that you can do the inner work. For some people, it stays out here, it stays on that outer shell, but they haven't done the inner work. So they speak confidence, they speak all the words in the language of confidence, but you can tell they're not fluent when it really comes to it. They know all the words, they know all the language, they can speak it, they can teach on it, but they can't be it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Amen, brother. Amen, brothers.
Yeah. Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, there was a closing of that gap for you. Is that?
Let me share a quick story with you.
Yeah.
That I think is really, this happened the other day, and this is my life. This is one of, I can't even count them all now. But I was in a bank, like a community bank here in Phoenix. And I wanted to set up a bank account, and we're just here on holiday, and it's virtually impossible to do that unless you've got a social security number and you're living here with the work permits and stuff.
Yeah.
And I went and I got introduced to this lady Ivy, and she was Chinese background, but she grew up most of her life in the US. And I was asking her what could be done to set up this bank account, and she said, "Look, there's really no options, and I'm sorry." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Can I share something with you?" She said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "I'm the world's best courage coach. And I teach people how to take bold, massive, and strategically courageous action to facilitate miraculous outcomes. And I'm moving to this country to do good." And you should have seen the change in her physiology.
Huh.
And then she just went into creation mode, and she started thinking about these other alternatives, and we came up with a solution.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I said to her what I say to a lot of people. Then I said, "So Ivy, what do you need help with?" And her immediate response was, she said, "Laban, you know what? I have everything that I could ever need. I'm so wonderfully blessed," and blah blah blah. And I said, "Ivy, I'm really happy to hear that." And then I had an opportunity to share some of my story, because she was asking me what I did. And, conquering the drink and the drugs and the gambling and the philandering and fixing autoimmune disease. And she goes, "What did you say?" And I said, "Autoimmune disease." She said, "What do you know about autoimmune diseases?"
Huh.
And it turns out she's been dealing with this autoimmune disease for a few years, right? And the knowledge that I was able to share with her transformed her experience in that moment. Then she started opening up about her husband, who has been grappling, who's an American guy, who's been grappling with the illness of his mother. And he's gone into his feminine. She's had to pick up the slack and has gone into a masculine, and it's negatively impacting their relationship. Long story short, we ended up hugging after an hour.
Wow. Yeah,
She came up and hugged me. And her and her husband are coming over for dinner next week as well with their daughter. And I suppose the reason I share that with you, and I'm not sure if it's answering exactly what you're saying, but
no, I want to highlight this. So keep going.
This is an example of the power of claiming all of the shit that's happened to you, right?
Yeah.
Taking back and using it as your superpower to improve the lives of people around you. And that experience, that woman will, she sent me a photograph last night of her husband and her 5-year-old daughter going to this like prom for 5-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
Her father was escorting her there, and she's sending a perfect stranger these, really memorable and personal moments with her.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a great example of the power when we do reclaim all our demons.
I think we get to own it. There's another version too here that I'm hearing inside of this, is that if Laban Ditchburn was speaking that he was confidence, but not being confidence behind the scenes, right? That conversation never would have happened. She would have had some walls up that said, "There's something off here. You're saying one thing, but I don't feel quite confident to open up the way that I could with you, because you're two different people going on." But when Laban owns his story, this is the power of claiming your story. Brene Brown talks about it. Like when you take ownership, Radical Honesty, that book is killer if you want to talk about having hard conversations, but just owning your story, right? And really being in it. it takes away the power from anyone else being able to use that story. It's your story. I own that story. I did that. I freaking stole $300 bottles of wine and I dropped one out of the Uber on the way home. Kind of karmic a little bit, right? I battled autoimmune diseases. I went through this. It's not a bragging like I did that. It's simply an expression of I did this. And this is where I learned to be courageous. And this is what I do for people, not from a space of speaking that I do that, but from the space of I do that. And she could feel that. And in that, there's this opening up, right?
Well, amen. And you're talking about Brene Brown. I actually called up Brene Brown and spoke to her on New Year's Day 2020. And this is long before I had any credibility. I had no podcast. I had no book. I had no idea what I was doing coaching. And I got her phone number and I called Brene Brown and she picked up the phone and I was back in Australia at the time. She goes, "Hi, Brene speaking." And I said, "Brene Brown?" She said, "Yes, it is." I said, "Brene Brown, it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia here." And she said, quite taken aback at who this random person was calling her. "How do you get my number?" She's like, "Oh, hi, Laban, how can I help?" I said, "Brene, I've been instructed by all of my mentors that I need to be around people that are much further along the line than I. And I was curious to know whether you'd like to share some ideas," right? That's all I had to offer. She said, "Laban, I'm about to sit down and have New Year's Day dinner with my family. But if you'd be so kind to send me an email with what you had in mind, I'll come back to you." So I drafted this email of
that was spot on, that accent. By the way.
Sorry, all you Texans out there.
Yeah.
And drafted this email about my bio at that point, and I wasn't super dialed into the world's best courage coach or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I created a little 1-minute YouTube thing that I sent her a link so that she could watch. And, well, bugger me, she replied back 3 days later. Wow. And she said, "Laban, thank you for your email. With what I have going on with university and family right now, I can't give this the dedication that it requires. You will do fantastically. All the best, Brene." And in that moment, that changed my DNA and allowed me to believe that I could then play at that level. And that triggered countless phone calls of speaking to some of the most extraordinary people on the planet, including, Mr. Les Brown, who was so kind to inspire the book and write the foreword for it.
Let's talk about belief then. Let's bring that word up, because this is phenomenal what you're offering here. If you can hear this, because who cares about your past life? Your past life was your past life. It's not that there's no caring there. It's just, it doesn't have to be impactful anymore. And so you have this new experience, and all of a sudden you go from this world of, I don't know if I could do this, possibly some unbelief there, but you act on it, right? I'm going to test it. And then you get a response, and boom, a new belief system opens up. Going back to Jordan Peterson, you believe on it when you act on it. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Maybe you got a gap in your belief system. And I've always understood the word belief to mean holding dear, Glauben, from Germanic Glauben, which means it's important to you. So you hold it dear, but you also act from there. So Townsend Wardlaw the other day, he shared, limiting beliefs, right? We have limiting beliefs. He said, every belief becomes limiting when you believe it, because now you've shut off all possibility outside of that. What a profound statement. So here you go. And outside of the realm of your experience, you've never talked to Brene Brown. New Year's Eve, you call her up. I don't know how this is going to go. Your whole paradigm shifts. And then all of a sudden you're off and running on a new belief system that you never had in your life before. That's powerful. Can you speak more to that?
Well, if you'll indulge me for one more story, I'll tell you about how the world's best courage coach came about.
We're done. We're limited to one a day.
One indulgement.
Yeah. I don't know if the word limited to allowed on this show.
No.
So in September last year, September 2021, I was told about Steve Hardison, who I saw was commenting and is watching this maybe now.
Yeah.
And there's a video that exists, and maybe you can put the link in the chat, of him talking about this footballer, Deuce Latui.
Yep.
The video for me was one of the most profound things I've ever experienced in my life. And I just knew in that moment that I said, I need to be in the presence of that man, Steve Hardison, to see if he is exactly what I think he is. And being resourceful that I am, I got his phone number in the same way that I got Brene Brown's.
Yeah.
And I called Steve. He picked up the phone, and I told him it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia. And he goes, Laban, I've been waiting for this call all my life. Now, for those that don't know, Steve, up until recently, he was an enigma.
Beautiful.
Didn't exist anywhere online apart from this one video,
Yeah.
maybe one other thing, right? And I said to him, Steve,
Wow.
I just wanted to ask you one very specific question. And he said, what's that, Laban? I said, what do you need help with? Because I had nothing else to offer you, Steve, nothing else. And he said, I just want to thank you for asking me that question. He said, I'm 8% body fat, like 60-something years old, does 10 miles a day, got everything he could possibly need, but I just appreciate you asking me that question.
So this was last year.
This is last year, right?
Wow.
And I said, oh, no worries, Steve. I said, look, are you doing interviews anymore? Or are you doing podcasts? He said, nope. I said, oh, no worries. I said, look, because I'm a coach and I'm a speaker and I've got this amazing podcast series called Become Your Own Superhero, and I'm well on my way to becoming the world's most positively influential speaker. But someone that I respect and admire recently said there's too much ego with that statement. I'm about to drop an F-bomb.
Yeah, please do.
Steve goes, Laban, you tell that person to fuck off. You know who I am. I said, who are you, Steve? Oh, evangelical at this point. He said, I'm the best coach in the world. And what transpired that day, and might I remind our audience, there was not an ounce of ego in that statement, right? 13 minutes of transformative experience with Mr. Steve Hardison. Thank you forever, Steve, for that impact you had on me. I messaged another friend of mine, Chris Doris, who's one of the guys that's in the Deuce Latui video, right?
Yep.
And him and I had become friends in the months leading up to that. And Chris's time is valued at the thousands of dollars per hour. And we spoke for 3 hours at no cost. And what was created was the world's best courage coach, right? And at that time, I had some major financial challenges that needed addressing. And so Chris and I came up with this formula. And I was to start cold calling the CEOs of the biggest companies on the planet. And I called the CEO of Zoom, Eric Yang, and he was on his car phone. He was coming in and out of signal. He couldn't quite understand what was going on, and that didn't work out. And it was getting late in the US. So I called some Australian numbers, and I spoke to this guy called Tony. And I'll protect his privacy. He's the CEO of a real estate company, which is the oldest real estate company in Australia. And he picks up the phone and he says, hi, Tony speaking. I said, Tony, it's Laban Ditchburn from Melbourne, Australia. And he was surprised at the confidence in my voice. He said, do we know each other? And I said, Tony, we've never spoken before, but today is your lucky day. He laughed and he said, why is it my lucky day, Laban? I said, because, Tony, I'm the world's best courage coach. And I teach your people how to take massive, bold, and strategically courageous action to facilitate miraculous outcomes. 13-minute phone call resulted in me being invited back the following Wednesday to present for some training and coaching that this huge organization needed. The following Wednesday was a 30-minute slot. An hour and 45 were on the phone on this Zoom call. We're in lockdown in Melbourne. I asked him one question about what his plans for the business were, and he spoke for about 45 minutes before I even dared utter a word. And he told me everything I needed to know. And Steve Hardison talked about, the power is in the listener. Such a powerful metaphor, right? And I said to him, Tony, what about becoming the best real estate company in the state of Victoria? He'd never been asked that question before, and he looked up and left, and he started nodding subconsciously, I think. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, what about becoming the best real estate company in Australia? And he's like nodding more vigorously now. And yeah. And I said, you do realize, Tony, in order for you to have the best real estate company in Australia, you need to be the best real estate CEO in Australia. 5 minutes later, Tony's out of his seat yelling at the top of his lungs, I'm the best real estate CEO in the world.
Thanks for that clarification, Ryan.
Yeah, Steve Hardison. It's Steve Hardison's Australian cousin.
And I pitched a multiple six-figure proposal to this company for a 3-month training program that worked out to be about $3,000 an hour. And bear in mind, the only contact with this man was the cold call that I'd made the week before and the conversation piece that we'd had, right? And I delivered that. It was consummate to the value that I knew that I could bring the organization and what was required in order for them to achieve what we were talking about. And he said to me, he didn't laugh, he didn't dismiss me, he didn't shut me off or cut off the call or anything. He said, Laban, he said, look, I physically do not have the liquidity to do that right now, but let me see what I can do. And I got off that call, and what happens with that proposal, whether that goes ahead or not, is inconsequential, because that flicked a switch in my head that I didn't know existed.
Can we highlight this? Keep going and finish out, and then I want to come back and highlight. So
the world's best courage coach was born. And so going back to what you were saying about courage and just reading and talking about it, executing courage, the question that I ask myself every single day when I get out of bed now, how would the world's best courage coach conduct himself?
Beautiful. Beautiful. There is a declaration before the creation. There's a declaration of who you are before you be it. And then you wake up every morning and you look at the areas where you are not that. And you start growing those areas of you. This is why the giant's journey is never over. If you think, I shared this morning in a coaching call. If you think you're done because you got one area of your life fulfilled, you're missing the point. Like, there are areas of your life where you're still playing small. So when you look at courage, the declaration came way before you started even being courageous. And that declaration became the vision, and you started envisioning yourself as that. So when you wake up in the morning or go to bed at night, you've got this vision in mind that you create yourself into. The idea that I think some of us get hung up on the idea, I can't say that because that's not who I am. Well, yeah, that's not who you are yet. We say it as though it's an I am, as though that's not moldable or adaptable or able to evolve. Like Darwin says that, the most adaptable to change are who advance, not the strongest. It's those that are adaptable to change. So if you're adaptable to change, you declare yourself as the world's best confidence coach. Well, there's some adaptability that gets to occur inside of that as you create yourself as that. And then these confirmations of belief. I like to highlight the pathway so that people can hear there is a process here, but I could hand you the best process in the world. And if you don't start being it from the inside, not going to do you any good. It's like Steve Artisan said, it's frosting on dog doo-doo, right?
Well, I've got a call to action for our amazing audience today. I want to talk to you something about Charles Darwin when we finish. Declaring yourself the world's best has fundamentally changed my life, in case you can't tell already. And I've seen a number of people in this amazing community of people that have made that declaration for themselves. And for those that are wondering how to do it, here's what you do. You find something that is non-quantifiable and intangible. So if you were to say to me, Laban, I'm the world's best 100-meter sprinter, unless you're Usain Bolt, we know, unless you're the best kept secret on the planet, we know that's not to be true. And that's where you will be caught out, because that's not a true statement. But if you can come up with something like the world's best courage coach, and there's room for other people to be the world's best courage coach as well, but the way the universe distributes these responsibilities that we've been God-given innate abilities, it doesn't seem to work out that way, right? And so if you can come up with something that is the world's best, insert your chosen niche here, and when you figure out what that is, it will align with you in a way that will give you the hair on the back of your neck will stand up when you say it and you declare it to the world. And you don't have to do this. But when you start doing that, people want to be around the best in the world. That's why people want to hang around the best athletes and the movie stars and and yes, there's some ego component to that as well, but it's because they're doing the unusual. That's the profound impact that I've had. And when I go on podcasts and radio shows and TV and all this other stuff, and people say, we're so blessed to have Laban Ditchburn, the world's best courage coach. It's like it's reaffirming it in my subconscious. So that 95% that's going around, it's like world's best courage coach, world's best courage coach. How about the world's best courage coach up in Sedona on the weekend? The water's about 0 degrees, and I saw you did your jump in the ice the other day, Nick, which is so cool. And someone said, "Are you going to go in?" And I was like, how would the world's best coach conduct himself? And then I got in and I felt like $1,000,000, right? This is the profound effect that this declaration to the universe will have on your life. And when people ask you what you do and you say, "I'm the world's best in my chosen niche," they go, "Wow, what does that look like?" And then you go into what you do, because what you two are doing and what I'm doing is fundamentally the same thing. We are providing an opportunity for people to enhance their lives in whatever way that is. But if you give people the clarity and simplicity, if you go back to that 8-year-old brain, then it gives them the confidence to buy into what you're doing and makes you a very powerful coach and a very powerful leader. And people stand up and pay attention.
I love it. I love it. I want to highlight it. I want to put it on my wall, stick it up there on my mirror. There's so much power in moving away. So you jumped, and I don't know if you heard this, but you jumped from how to what. And there's a clear distinction that can be created with those two words. How seems to be a word that comes from fear. What comes from courage. Courage exists in the presence of fear. But you can be courage and not feel fearful. You can be at peace, right? So the idea of moving from the how to the what is where the power is. Because when you move to the what, now you're into action. From the how, you're in exploration and fear. You're in uncertainty. You're trying to figure out the path before you move, all the things that could go wrong, and trying to hedge for those and control everything that comes into your space. So if you're in the how hole, you're not going to move very far because you're trying to predict every path before it happens. You get into the what, you don't care what the path is. If there's a next step, I'm taking it. If there's another step, I'm going to take it. And then serendipity comes in. You have these calls that come out of nowhere, these invitations to do things that you didn't even see on your radar. They weren't even in your construct in any way. Is that your experience, or did I just maybe made that up? Like possibly.
I'm going to surmise exactly what you said it in one statement.
Yes.
When the why becomes clear, the how becomes easy. When the why becomes clear, the how becomes easy. Amen, brother.
Yeah, I like that silence too. That is impactful. If you can hear that, you're watching this, if you can hear that, the why, right? Simon Sinek talks about the why. And we hear that. It can become pretty cliche. But the vision of who you are, when you make that declaration, you start to see experiences of that in your world, that's who you are, and your vision gets more and more clear. You have a pre-membering of who you are. Then the how is easy. It's easy to act on everything. There's no hard part. It becomes fun.
Can I share something personal? And I share this with it's a heads up to Anna and I, people that know my darling fiance Anna. She's the woman that I knew I wanted to meet my entire life, but was beginning to think I wouldn't. And we've been together 3.5 years. And collectively, her and I have had 15 consecutive miscarriages together. 15, including 2 ectopic pregnancies, one that nearly killed her in 2019. And when you ask me, how are you going to get over that? I don't need to know the answer to that question. How are you going to create a family? It's because I'm clear as on my why. And if the universe decides that it doesn't want us to have children, then we'll adopt. And if the universe decides it doesn't want us to adopt, then I'll just go and steal a child on the street, right? But you see my point, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'm totally at peace now with what the universe has in for me. I'm creating it. I'm creating it, and I'm at peace with it now. It's miraculous.
Wow.
And as a result of adopting that mindset, you would not believe, or you would believe, the number of people that are coming into our lives with ideas, things we've never even thought of, that are helping us get to that goal of having that baby, right?
Isn't that incredible? The amount of collaboration and support and community that comes together when you get clear on your why. Others decide that becomes their why. Your why becomes their why. it becomes their purpose in life. I love the word purpose. I look at it a little different from the Latin purpose, which is to move forward to a place, to move forward to a rest, right? So when you have a purpose, it's simply a place to rest. And so the why is that it's one of millions that you'll create in your life if you'll do it. There's no one. The idea that having a baby is a purpose and a vision and a why, as much as writing a book, as much as becoming a courage coach, as much as anything else. And I had friends that they accomplished one purpose and then they didn't know what to do next. They got really depressed. It's not as though you have one. But the idea here is that when you get clear on your why and you step into it, then others come along and they make your why their purpose and they support you in it. And that's where the magic happens.
And a really great point, just, in conjunction with what you're saying, Nick, is that I couldn't write an acknowledgement list in my book because there's way too many people. And I couldn't bear the thought of missing out a single person that's had a profound impact on my life, no matter how long or short they were involved in my life. And, maybe that's the easy way out. I'm sure if I spent enough time doing it, it'd be a whole nother book, right? And it's magnified. It's like interest in Bernie Sanders' bank account. It's just everywhere, like compounding everywhere. And I just can't explain the daily miracles that occur in my life after making the declaration becoming clear. And I want to have a bit of fun with this.
Yeah.
If you'll indulge me real quick.
Yes,
Ryan.
Yep.
Have you thought about what your world's best is?
I don't know how to put it in. It's not like a. Maybe you guys could help me. I don't know. I don't know how to put it into like a, because I don't do yoga like Melissa. I don't do. I cheerlead like Jen, but not like Jen. She's is the world's best cheerleader, but I see the best in others and their potential until they can see it for themselves. I don't know how to put that into I am the world's best of that.
The world's best self-potential coach.
That's what I am.
Right. And you can play around with this. And the reason I deliberately wanted to put you on the spot, Ryan, because I see something in you, but that because you're too close to yourself, you can't quite see it yet, right? If you think about the work that you do, what's the problem that you're solving? Figure out what that is. If you're helping people realize their self-potential, then you focus on the positive affirmational word. I mean, potential is still a positive word, right? So with me, it's like I'm helping people move away from fear. So the opposite of fear really, I suppose, is courage. And so that's the affirmational component. And you don't need to have any clarity about being a coach or whatever it might be. As soon as you make that declaration, the universe will just create what you're supposed to be doing. And it all boils down to self-worth. It always does. My self-worth was in the toilet for years. And I used to seek validation, and I used to belittle and demean myself and use negative self-talk. And for those that know me in the last 6-12 months know that I refuse to use any negative self-talk. We've got a mastermind group where if you use negative self-talk, it's a $10 fine. Right? And because we understand the power of this self-talk, the potential of you being the world's best self-potential coach, or whatever the language you want to use, can you imagine if you were able to show 1 million people what their potential is? And then you combine that with the world's best children's yoga instructor, or the world's best cheerleader, or the world's best courage coach, or the world's best reclamation coach, or the world's best life optimization coach. If we're all lifting up, we can just batter people down the lane, the bowling lane, with the barrier arm so that they don't go in the gutter. They bounce all the way to the end. All of a sudden, you get a strike. power.
Hmm.
And I don't mean to put you on the spot or make you feel uncomfortable or to do anything. It all comes from a place of absolute adoration for what you and Nick do. You guys have just created something so unbelievably powerful, and I think you've got an obligation to realize how good that is.
I received that, Laban, and I know who you are, and we've had the opportunity to do some things together and to be around each other, and I'm really good. My bullshit meter. I have a very strong bullshit meter, and when it goes off,
He's not on to me yet, dude. I'm still working on it.
there's a lot of frosting on there, Nick. No,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
no, but I can hear it, I can see it, I can sense it. I'm a salesman. They say in the industry you can't bullshit a bullshitter. I I can feel, I can hear, I can see, I can smell it a mile away. You are not that, and I know who you are. Yeah, that's why I wouldn't have said, "Hey," I said in here a few comments above um, about how you adopted us and we adopted you.
I want to extend a challenge because I hear, Ryan, if you'll hear this, this is you, and this is how I experience you. And I'm the upper left-hand corner of the mirror reflecting back at you, just a little sliver of the experience of Ryan R. Morris, the lion, is immediately upon hearing a compliment about him, Ryan will step into the world of showing you how great you are. And what I would challenge people to do in the comments is be a sliver of the reflection of Ryan Morris, because Luisa Milano, she's Townsend Wardlaw's wife, extremely powerful. You will never see your face the way you see another human's face. That can only be reflected to you by their experience of you, or you'll see yourself in a mirror, but that's it. You will never see your face. And so the only way for Ryan R. Morris, the lion, to really experience who he is for those in the comments to really express who is Ryan Morris to you. How do you experience him? And to really have you take that in. What I hear you do, and I hope you'll hear this, and this isn't me, it is me calling you out in a way,
Sure,
lovingly.
I can handle it because that's what I want. I want to grow. So.
Is that to truly receive it is to sit with that. I know you see the greatness in others, but to just let their greatness that they see in you come across and just sit in receiving.
Thank you.
I love you, brother.
I fucking love you too, boys. Sorry about the attempt to try and keep profanity, and sometimes just a well-positioned profanity, as Steve Hardison says, is really necessary.
Steve Hardison said that his bishop asked him, or somebody in his church asked him, "Do you use language?" He said, "Only when I do." Love it.
Yeah. You know, it's a phenomenal thing here that gets created just in conversation. You know, there is a backstory to Laban Ditchburn. There is a backstory to Ryan Morris. There's a backstory to Nick Smith, and the adventure that created who we are today. It's not that we're done. It's just simply where we are today. And so when we can sit with somebody in their story and really hear that, and they get to hear our experience of them, then there's an opportunity to change and to grow. And that's what we're trying to create here is just a recognition in other people's journeys that this could be you. Laban Ditchburn is you wherever you're at, you know, in that journey. I would wonder if you were to go back in time, Laban, and if you could impart some wisdom with yourself at a younger time, what piece of wisdom you would share with you?
Treat yourself like someone you really care about. Treat yourself like someone you really care about. The way I used to speak about myself would have driven friends away from me if I'd spoken to them in that manner. And I feel like some of that resonates, Ryan, with the experience that you've been going through over the many years. And I don't mean to keep picking on you. We're calling you out on this.
Yeah.
And treat
Perfect.
yourself, because I meet so many amazing people. I had this experience with this Michael DeLeon. I went and was invited to watch this Michael DeLeon speak at a Crossroads, which is a halfway house for people that are coming out of drug rehab and come out of prison and stuff. All males. This Michael DeLeon, Deleon, I think, has a story that makes what I wrote about seem like a joke. Got addicted to drugs and alcohol, and it was a heroin addict by the time he was an adult. He was abused by a religious member when he was a young boy, and never had the courage to speak up about it. And it sent him on this pathway. He became a professional criminal, and it resulted in his mother being murdered on Mother's Day by some gangbangers that he had, with a botched drug deal. A younger brother of the gang leader had been killed, and they did a revenge attack and killed his mother on Mother's Day. And then he got framed for it and spent time in prison while they were going through the process. He's done 12 years in federal prison. And this guy now goes around and speaks to all these kids. He's got this, amazing passion for improving the lives of these young men to prevent all this other stuff. And it was really interesting talking to him about, what investing are you doing in yourself? What are you looking after yourself? This guy works 1 million hours a week, hasn't seen his wife, in like 3 months because he's just on the road, does all this stuff and doesn't charge enough for it. And it's burning him out, he's in his late 50s. And we had this really powerful opportunity to share. And it's like, man, you've got to put your own needs first so that you can then best serve others. Because if you're dead from stress and a heart attack, that stops. It's a good lesson for all of us there, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Ryan, I was having this thought too, man. There will be naysayers. Let it be like bird shit on a lighthouse. Insignificant. It means nothing of who you are.
I got hate mail. Sorry, Ryan, you go.
I just said I'm the mountain. Nick wrote a poem the other day. If you haven't read it, go find it on his wall. It says, "I am the mountain." It's about the mountain, and I am the mountain.
I read it. It was beautiful. Yeah. I get hate mail very occasionally, and I'm sure it'll increase as my profile increases. It was from a former high school friend who sent me a direct message on Facebook, who said, "Stop trying to scam vulnerable people with what you're doing." And it related to, on my website, there's you can buy a signed autographed copy of the book and some time with me. You don't have to, but it's an option there. And some people have taken me up on it, right? And the way that I've learned about reacting to these situations, I just immediately saw it, and there was a twang of like, "You mother," and then I was like, "Chill, Ditchburn, chill." And I was like, how terrible is his own experience for him to go out of his way to send me that message? How shitty is his life right now? And he's just telegraphing that onto me. I know this guy. He's been a drug addict ever since I've known him, ever since we were like 13. And there's no judgment on him, but like when he sees what I'm doing with my life, it triggers him because it makes him go, "Oh, he's doing it. Maybe I should." That's the mindset. And we need to be prepared for this kind of these kind of experiences, because it's not all sunshine and lollipops,
No. And it's part of the journey. If you're pleasing everybody and you're not getting that, then you might be missing something. I've got 1-star reviews on the Giants and the Smalls. I could see where they're coming from when they write it and who they're being when they write that. I don't get to take their experience away. I also don't have to make their experience my experience.
You know what I experience you as, Laban, because I don't know if I feel like I'm well connected, but I also do relationships well. I love people, and so I'll reach out to them and talk to them, and that's kind of my jam. And since you came into this space and our paths crossed, I hear all the time. I was the other day. Laban called. Oh, the other day I was talking with Laban. I'm telling you that it doesn't matter what that other guy says, does, whatever. He could go out and put the loudest trumpet out about how Laban Ditchburn, that piece of shit. But you be the mountain, and you are the mountain. You're the one that's shining brighter. You're the lighthouse, right? That you are being Laban, and I see it. I hear it. I talk to others, and they see it too. And so, really, then you know who you be. That Ryan doing Ryan things is enough. I don't give a shit what everyone else thinks because I know who I am, and I consistently show up as Ryan doing Ryan things. And that's good enough for me.
There are not two versions of him. I know that from experience. That metaphor of the poem, that metaphor of the poem is there's a space to read it as the mountain. There's a space to read it as the person pushing against the mountain. There's both in there, and it's intentional. And it's intentional to wake you up to you are also the mountain in some people's lives. They are resistant to your change. And so you don't need to break down that you are the mountain because of their discomfort. There are also times where other people are the mountain in your discomfort. And there's an opportunity to grow in that. So, Laban, I just hear in your journey, as I experience you too, I experience you as consistent. There's no double standard in that. It's Laban Ditchburn is Laban Ditchburn through and through. You talk about courage, it's all the way in, all the way to the marrow. Well, even beyond that, to the quantum of it, right? I experience you as that. I'm so grateful that we could have your journey on here and share this. Is there anything else you want to share today?
Well, Nick and Matt, I can't express to you in English language how grateful I am to have been brought into your existence, both of you, and the profound impact that you've had on me. You'll never truly know. And I know I do say that to you, but it's non-quantifiable at this point in my mind. I still have major adversity in my life. I still have unbelievable, insurmountable challenges to overcome. But it's being around people like you two that gives me the momentum to keep doing what I'm doing. And so that when I'm in positions of strength, I can do the same for others. And when I'm in position where I'm struggling a little bit, and I can draw upon the wonderful resources, and the work that you two are doing is truly magnificent, and you should be so proud. And it's an honor to know you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, you've rubbed off just a little bit.
the Ditchburn do adopt it.
That's right.
Phenomenal.
I got to get a pink one of these for the next ultimate experience, maybe, huh?
Ryan, do you have some final thoughts?
And I say this a lot, and I'm just gonna tell you, yeah, the No Shirt Gang. That's how some of that started. Alex, where you at, brother? I just want to let you know, Laban, that I've got to see and experience even just a part of you, and my experience of Laban Ditchburn is courage, is love, is showing up consistently, is showing up for others, whether he gets paid or not, because he is love, he is courage. You're being the things that you say you are, and because of that, because of all the decisions I made, and because of all the decisions you made, serendipity, the universe, God lined us up to be right on time, to be exactly where we needed to be at this point in time. And if we hadn't done what we did, either of us, all three of us, we wouldn't be sitting here right now working on ourselves and helping others to see their giant potential. So thank you for seeing it in me. Thank you for seeing it in others, and continue to be a giant, because you are. Love you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Man, as I think of this show, Anna in the house. We need to have her on the show.
Yes, we do.
We are all walking the bridge. As I think of my position here, is I am not the man on the other side of the bridge calling you across. I am not the man on the other side of the bridge pushing you across. I am walking beside you on the bridge. And in that journey, I am just like you. I'm figuring things out just like you are. I'm human just like you are. I have struggles like you just said, Laban, like you do. And so it's from that I'm growing and learning, just like everybody that's watching the show and that has watched the show and commented. It's a journey, and we're all walking the bridge together. So my purpose is to be there with you, not to do it for you, not to push you through it, but to be right beside you as you walk through it. And I think that's what each of us does so powerfully, is that we are bridge walkers. We're in the game. And I appreciate it. I think of each of those that have been with us from the very beginning as we continue to grow. Our vision now is over 22,000 members by the end of 2022 in the tribe of giants. And so it would have the question be asked, who would all of us need to be for that to occur? Each one of us, it would be a collaborative creation in your world. I love that you left people out on saying thank you, because there are so many that contributed to who you are today. And that's how I feel around the Giants. Is it's not about Nick, it's not about Ryan. It is a collaboration and a creation that all of us have put together. So I'm so grateful. For those that are watching, remember, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're doing exactly what you should be doing. You're right on time. There is no lost time. Just because you're starting today, there's no lost time. You get to choose your creation, whatever that is. So step into it fully. Remember that we love you, and we will see you in the next episode.
Love you too.